How much should a gigabyte cost?
Well, we have never had to answer that question because for years, internet service providers have been charging flat monthly rates for an unlimited amount of data. But recently, internet traffic has spiked, and ISPs are making decisions on how to handle that. I want to get you thinking about this basic question because I believe a new price model solves many of the issues that net neutrality does not. This video is not intended to explain what net neutrality is. There are plenty of videos already online that explain exactly what you need to know, and I provided a few in the description below. Let me start by saying I am a supporter of the principles of net neutrality, but not the legislation. I wouldn't want ISPs to be deciding which sites get fast lanes and which sites get slowed down, but I believe that net neutrality would only fix the surface level issues. It is not accounting for the weaknesses of the FCC, the strengths of the divided markets, and the infrastructure of the networks. First, here's some problems with the FCC. They censor broadcasted content on the radio and TV, and we run the risk of them censoring our internet by creating precedents over rulings over our access to the internet. If that doesn't sound risky enough, how about this? The head chairman of the FCC is Tom Wheeler, a former telecommunications and cable lobbyist. I doubt he'll go through with any current legislation. But let's say he does. Our government would be entering a legal battle that could last years, and that doesn't even guarantee that net neutrality will be implemented. Second, divided markets for ISPs discourage improvement of infrastructure. Since large ISPs like Comcast and Time Warner Company have divided markets, they've reduced competition and created barriers for new ISPs to enter the market. The regulation imposed by net neutrality would do nothing to break down these barriers. The final problem is that bandwidth is a resource. The pipelines that connect your computer to the content provider's server are being shared by others. And it might seem like an ugly truth to all of us, but we're demanding that our access to HD content be really fast all the time. And net neutrality tells ISPs what they can't do, but does nothing to solve the overarching problem of increased internet traffic. Alright, so I've established that net neutrality is not a solution. So let's look at what happens if we do nothing. ISPs will continue to slow down specific sites without informing their customers. And their customers will blame the content providers for lower quality service, which will counterintuitively put the sites that we like most out of business. And by setting up fast lanes and elites on the internet, less established companies and startups will be endangered, and the innovation of the internet will inevitably be slowed down. So it's clear that a solution is needed that both aligns with the principles of net neutrality and addresses the problem of handling increased internet traffic. And for that, I say we dig deeper into the common carrier definition. As part of net neutrality, ISPs would be defined as common carriers, by which they couldn't discriminate access to certain sites. Let's look at what all common carriers up to this point have had in common that ISPs do not. Mail services charge for the individual packages they deliver. Airlines charge for the individual passengers. And phone companies charge for individual call lengths. So it's clear that these companies charge for the individual services they render, but in contrast, ISPs charge unlimited flat rates. Also, internet access is no longer a luxury but a utility, and it needs to be charged like a utility. So how about we compare internet service providers to a utility like electric companies? I chose electric companies because similar to ISPs, electric companies have seen an increased amount of electricity usage, which puts stress on their infrastructure, and they've had to make decisions on how to handle that. They've begun implementing a solution called a smart grid. A smart grid charges customers differing amounts depending on the time of day. So during peak hours of usage, customers pay more for electricity, and during times like the night, customers pay less. This encourages new technologies and habits which distribute the electricity usage throughout the day. This solution not only could work for ISPs, but it would work even better. The reason you're probably not part of a smart grid right now is because it requires the installation of a smart meter at your house. But ISPs wouldn't have to install anything because they already have modems that keep track of customer usage. So we've come to the final question: how much should a gigabyte cost? Let's look at a simulation I've created to see how a smart grid can charge customers for differing amounts of data at different times of the day. First, let's start by considering how much differing bandwidth should cost. Since customers would only pay for what they use, we have to consider an increasing marginal cost to create an incentive for being more patient and using lower bandwidth. Otherwise, in a linear relationship, users would have no incentive to use lower bandwidth because at all rates, they'd still pay the same amount. Next, we need to consider the daily traffic graph. This graph's shape is a theoretical model of what the traffic might look like on your ISP. If you want a more personalized model, you can check the description for a link to YouTube's daily traffic on your ISP. We can think of the value on this graph as a multiplier for the price. So by combining these two graphs, we get a 3D model that looks something like this, where the area under the path corresponds to the cost to download. And this affords itself to a couple of sub-price models. The first one is depicted on this graph, with which the customer specifies a constant bandwidth, and they pay differing prices per bit throughout their download. This would create a path that looks linear from above. A second price model is when a customer sets a constant price per bit, and their bandwidth rate changes throughout their download. This in the math field is called a level curve. If you'd like to play around with this model yourself, check out the description for a download link to the Mathematica CDF. So now let's look at how the smart grid solution solves all the issues that net neutrality legislation doesn't. First, this plan requires no government intervention and can be implemented on any ISP. Second, new ISPs like Google Fiber who find new ways of handling more bandwidth will be able to charge less. This also encourages old ISPs to reinvest their profits back into improving our access to the internet. And finally, customers will be getting exactly what they expect for what they pay for. Being more conscious of their internet usage will distribute traffic throughout the day, creating stabler networks. I hope you found this solution practical and easy to understand and want to see it become implemented. You can help do that by rating this video a thumbs up and sharing it with your friends. I encourage you to contribute your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching.